Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and a bit of a walloping. Not much of this left at the moment because I've withdrawn so much Bitcoin and Solana and Ethereum to put into the ETFs and just sort of sell anyway. Obviously, only 1.5 Bitcoin left, and yeah, a lot of this Solana has gone, of course. So I need to sort of do something with that at some point, write some of it off, and sell what I can get left. But yeah, about 10.5% down on the paper value, to be fair, this week. Sort of 27,000. It's not been ideal, which I'll show you in the chart. But looking at the CoinShares report from last week, we saw uh, 2 billion pretty much on the nose of outflows. This was largely, well, pretty much all Bitcoin and Ethereum, of course. 1.3 billion from Ethereum, Bitcoin, 690 million from Ethereum, 31 million into the multi-asset. Almost seems to be a bit of an inverse to the market. It was sort of dropping while the market was doing well. Yeah, now 31 million of inflows. Still a massive sort of assets under management. So very strange. Um, Solana, 8.3 million out. We've not seen outflows from Solana or XRP, 15 million for a little while. So there is that. That's the European ETFs, I'm presuming, because the US new ones look pretty good. A little bit, well, 3.3 million into Litecoin. That's not bad. 6 million into Sui in a week like this is pretty good. That's been out quite. These have been out quite a while. They've been on the list a long while. And yeah, 9 million into short Bitcoin. People are still wanting to short. A little bit into Cardano and 5 million into others. Looking at the by country breakdown, there's sort of no surprises here really. Sweden and Switzerland selling out where they'd been depositing, and sort of slight inflow into Germany, but largely sort of small figures here really. Looking at this week's flows, it's been, to be fair, a little bit of a mixed bag. Not quite as bad as last week. Monday sort of got a 250 million sort of across the board sell off, although relatively small numbers. Um, Tuesday, it was sort of just the big day for BlackRock, actually. 523 million outflow. It was actually quite a big inflow into the new grayscale. It sort of took it to minus 372. Then Wednesday, you got an inflow into BlackRock, and sort of outflows from Fidelity and VanEck, who don't have a huge amount as it is. Little inflow into new grayscale. Thursday was sort of a wallop of a day. Outflows across the board, really. 200 million out of the old grayscale, so it's sort of continuing to just people sort of think, well, if I've got a tax I'm going to have to pay anyway, might as well just cut my losses now, or maybe it's come closer to their average price and they don't have much tax to pay on it. So yeah, that took it to 900 million outflow for the day. And then Friday, interesting one, outflow from BlackRock, 122 million, inflows to everyone else, including the old grayscale. So people trading, I presume. So yeah, 238 million inflow on Friday, which wasn't a great day. It sort of dropped and came back. So yeah, that was Bitcoin. Ethereum was quite similar, although Monday to Thursday all net outflows, but sort of some inflows into the new grayscale, outflows every day from BlackRock, and only a sort of mix across the rest. Little inflow into Fidelity on Friday, sort of making that a positive day overall, but yeah, not a lot of life in Ethereum. And the Solana ones, we've got a few Solanas here now. So VanEck have launched at 0.3% fee. I think this is a new one. We had the Bitwise and Grayscale GSOL one, but we've now got Fidelity at 0.25%, 21 shares at 0.21%, sort of given the name, I presume. And yeah, they've sort of seeded them with different amounts. Fidelity has basically no seed at all, and yeah, Vanek got a little. 21 shares has 111 million in seeded amount, where sort of, and Bitwise had double that, although they are the big player, it seems still. Vanek, Fidelity, and 21 shares sort of getting very, very little in the way of inflow, where Bitwise getting sort of double digits most days still, even a few weeks after they've launched. So sort of 23 million, 35 million on Wednesday, and well, no outflows at all from any of them. Obviously, these are, either they seeded the fund sort of a few weeks ago, or they've been buying in the last couple of weeks. So to sell would be a little bit sort of short-term tradery. But yeah, I thought we might have on the Thursday maybe when it was a bit rough. Thought we might have seen some people just have second thoughts and sell out. Maybe there is that, and there's just more demand, but yeah, we'll never know. But it's starting to be a bit of a better landscape for Solana on the ETF side. Bit of a surprise on the treasury companies as well. Michael Saylor said big week, and you sort of never quite know whether he means big week or not. He sort of teases a buy, and then it's like 200 Bitcoin. But yeah, this week they bought 8,178 Bitcoin, which is biggest buy for a very long while. 835 million at, yeah, admittedly at 102,000 average. So yeah, it spent quite a bit of time at 85, even got to 80,000 this week. So that wasn't the best buy. Sort of takes their average up to 74,433. So if we reached 80, I think 80,500. It was only 6,000 above their average, so that's not ideal. They hold almost 650,000 Bitcoin, but yeah, I'm sure that will go down as a relatively poor buy. He said believe, and then a load more tweets here and there, and then yes, MicroStrategy are getting on the preferred shares with the dividend. Not ideal, I don't think. I don't agree with MicroStrategy really doing this, but yeah, I think that sort of just increases risk when you don't need to. Metaplanet have done $150 million worth of preferred shares at a 4.9% dividend, but they have one-to-one conversions, so I don't think all of the MicroStrategy preferred shares are convertible into MSTR shares. I think they are what they are, whereas this one has a lower dividend but can be converted. So they get that sort of, I guess, option upside if Metaplanet shares do really well. They can get a bit of dividend and then convert it. But does mean that they have to pay their dividend presumably through selling common stock, which is down pressure, sell pressure permanently, basically. A lovely photo of Michael Saylor with a boat. People have been sort of previously saying that his, lifeboat abandoning the Bitcoin ship post was a little bit strange for him to post. That was supposed to be a sort of hodl. He would sort of probably say the boat is the traditional financial system and he's escaping in a Bitcoin dinghy or something. But yeah, almost seems like just trolling. But yeah, and he responded to the MSCI index, then potentially getting delisted from MSCI could cause a bit of sell pressure on the stock. He sort of says they're not a holding company, they're a publicly traded company with a 500 million revenue business. That's basically irrelevant now. They are essentially a Bitcoin ETF. And he points out that people are talking about the price obviously getting close to their average price, and he says in the depths of the 2022 crypto winter, their average cost was $30,000, and Bitcoin traded to 16,000, and they bought more. To be fair, they did buy more. They weren't forced sellers or anything. There was a lot of talk of them being liquidated, forced sellers, and no, they did, to be fair, structure their debt quite well, and I think most of their debt is sort of due to expire in 2027, 2028, some 2030. So yeah, they don't have to sell. Even if Bitcoin were to go to 50,000 or something, there'll be a lot of headlines saying they're going to be forced to sell, and it looks like they won't. Aside from paying the dividend on those preferred shares, they don't actually have to do anything. It's a minor story, but getting more and more stimulus. Japan sort of don't usually come out with massive numbers like US and China, but well, sounds a big number, 17 trillion yen. That is $110 billion. It's still a reasonable sized stimulus package they're considering, but it does look like this is probably going to go through. The new Prime Minister is a sort of fairly spend heavy Prime Minister, sort of wanting to, I guess, potentially try and grow them out of their enormous debt, even though this will obviously add to debt, but they're hoping to get a return on that investment, of course. And yeah, government didn't really comment as it's a rumour, but yeah, I would have thought you'll see a sort of confirmation on this at some point. So yeah, good for well, maybe not good for sort of the public, Japanese public, or any public, but yeah, it's good for risk assets, especially sort of liquidity and money supply assets like gold and crypto. So I highlighted the fear and greed index yesterday in the stocks that had got sort of into extreme fear, into single digits. We haven't actually got there to single digits on the crypto side, which is sort of unusual considering we got to 80,000. But yeah, we sort of got to 10 yesterday. It was 11. Now still extreme fear, but 13 because it's risen up a little bit, I suppose. Last month we were at 30, so it's not exactly good times. This is the last month. It's sort of been trickling into extreme fear, and now you wouldn't think that you'd get extreme fear sort of consistently for a week, just bobbling around 10 to 15 basically, but that's what we've got. Looking at the sort of longer term chart, we were sort of back in almost, well, touching extreme greed, sort of between greed and extreme greed on a few days, just back in July and August, and did sort of get to the high end of greed on the 5th of October before we had that enormous liquidation, 10th of October. So yeah, it's been sort of down ever since then. Looking at the sort of max chart on this one, it's a little bit all over the place. Coin market cap also have theirs, and we got to a 10 on theirs last 10 yesterday, 18 last week, similar numbers to the other one, but sort of gives a bit of a better indication of sort of how many times we've been down here. So we didn't actually get to 10 on this one, even in the Liberation Day lows. So 76,000. I think it reached 74,000 during that day. And yeah, the fear and greed index got to 15. So yeah, 74,000. We've only got to 80 and a half this time, and we're at 10. And the March sell-off was similar, 15, and got to sort of 78,000. So we're at an all-time low on this fear and greed index, albeit only goes back to 2023, where the other one goes back to 2018, and there have been lots of times in the sort of the 10 range and a few times into sort of single digits. The not actually the lows of the 2022 bear market, but sort of a low point back in June, and on the actual lows and the FTX collapse and everything, it only got to 20, which is unusual. But yeah, people are rather fearful at the moment. Did just check into DeFi Llama as well and found some interesting numbers. Sort of seeing a little bit of a pickup in TVL. Ethereum had been sort of dropping steadily after peaking in April, and sort of since middle of October has sort of, it seemed, bottomed and started picking up again. Sort of 53 million ETH. Looking at it in ETH terms, as I always think you should. And yeah, got up to 57.8 million ETH. So that's not too bad. Stable coins are sort of trickling up, not a huge amount. I think stable coins overall have sort of been slightly shrinking. Just sort of presumably some people getting out of the market and liquidations and things. But yeah, Solana sort of obviously looks very much an up and down chart on the sort of USD value, but on the Sol value, we just had rather a large breakout. Sort of, yeah, looking at the past couple of years, you can see a fairly steady trend upwards that sort of plateaued somewhat in June, July, August time, and there's then picked up quite drastically in November. Sort of just 3 weeks ago, you're at 146 million Sol, sort of pushed up to 152, and then up to sort of 172, and is now sitting at 178 million Sol. So it's added, 24 million Sol basically in just 22 million Sol in the past 3 weeks. So that's quite good. There is 560 million, I think, Sol in total. So obviously a lot of that gets used in meme coin purchases and all sorts, rather than sort of being locked away in DeFi and things. But yeah, good to see a fairly drastic increase from how they'd been. You look at sort of that on the long-term chart. That's certainly not a steady rise as we'd been getting over the last couple of years. So pretty good for Solana. Might see what that's for at some point. Looking at the Bitcoin miners, sort of it's been a little bit low past week. Did spike up to 1.275 zettahash on yesterday, and a sort of settled down around 1.3, between sort of 1 and 1.3. That's an okay level. I think that still brings down the difficulty estimates, so yeah, ever so slightly, 10.15 minutes, so it's not going to be a huge adjustment. That is due Wednesday, and down 1.48% to sort of 150, but that has pushed mining cost very, very high, and I think from what I saw, the majority of miners are now sort of underwater. They are mining at a loss, so obviously a lot of them will carry on because they bought the machines, and that's only, I think, a loss including sort of depreciation of the machines and everything. But yeah, it's not ideal. There are many miners that are actually at a loss just on electricity cost. I think Hive maybe in that potentially, although they've that may be sort of at a loss in Sweden and Canada and places, for example, and in profit in Paraguay, since that's a new expansion. But overall, I expect they aren't doing particularly well. They're not going to unplug, I'm sure. Maybe some of the sort of Kazakhstan and Russia and people will unplug, but who knows? They don't seem to be at the moment. Still sort of well over 1 zettahash. So yeah, not very helpful. Looking at the global liquidity chart, obviously we've well and truly broke down this correlation for the near term. We've sort of in the last week or so, gone from nearly 100, just over 100,000 to 80,000. We sort of reached, depending on which exchange you look at, and are now sitting at 86. But on this sort of 12-week delayed time period, the liquidity was still increasing, and it doesn't sort of peak until December. So 12 weeks before December it peaked. Maybe we're getting sort of closer correlated, and now that it's on on the downside, there isn't quite such a delay. But yeah, I would probably say that this has just died off somewhat. As far as sort of being closely correlated on that shorter term, I think if you still look at the auto fit, the log scale price, you do sort of get a general up and down with global liquidity. I think if we can put this on the weekly chart, yeah, you can sort of see basically sort of somewhat of a correlation there. If we sort of just bring that down to fit somewhat more. This isn't, obviously it has to, the price has to work somewhat. You can't sort of increase one side and decrease the other. This is, it either fits or it doesn't. If I sort of had a stock that, peaked in 2014 and was continuously down, it doesn't matter what you do to it, stretching it, it doesn't fit. So yeah, a lot of people will sort of say, oh, you're just stretching it to fit the chart, but it does, we're just smoothing out the volatility basically, and yeah, making it sort of somewhat fit. And you can see it's a very loose fit. It'll go way above it at points, and comes down in the bear markets, sort of 2022 bear market, but generally it does tend to sort of follow it along. And obviously we've been up quite significantly all of this year, and it has now sort of peaked out temporarily. I can't imagine we've peaked for the long term. So yeah, I think sort of zooming out a little bit on this, we can accept that fine, it can break down for long periods, but still a useful chart to look at. So looking at what got walloped for the week, Bitcoin 9.9% down, Solana 8.4%, Ethereum actually worse of the three, 12.3% down, Chainlink 12%, Helium 23%, that's underperformer for the week, Metaplex 8.7% down, Radium actually in a close second place, 22% down, Gito 21%, and Honey 12.6%. So I've got 4 tokens now at the sort of £500 or under range, making an enormous loss here. You sort of wonder whether it would be worth selling these and getting quite a large tax loss, or whether we do sort of wait for a potentially stronger market next year, and whether these altcoins come back, or whether the market's going to just leave them behind and new coins will come out and do well, and we'll see. It's not that often to get sort of smaller altcoins span 2 or 3 cycles of continuous new highs every bull market. So yeah, there's always the potential that these just die off. They were part of the sort of meme coin bonanza. Metaplex sort of tied to meme coins and NFTs, neither of which are doing particularly well. Radium sort of tied to the meme coin exchanges. They're not part of Pump Fun anymore, and so they've just got their exchange business and sort of launching their own, I think, meme coin type thing. I don't really want to be tied all that much to meme coins, but yeah, there is that. And of course, Honey, mentioned last week, just carrying on mapping more of the world, but it doesn't seem a particularly profitable business. So Helium sort of the only one that's actually continually pushing out good user numbers and metrics and things, but still 57% down. So yeah, unsure as to what to do with these. I could sort of, sell, as I say, take the tax loss and potentially put them in a sort of risky options bet that could, 10, 20x and sort of more than make up all of this loss, or sort of hold on and see if crypto, meme coins, NFTs, or some new use case comes back, and these sort of ecosystem tokens can do well. But unsure. So leave your thoughts in comments below, and like and subscribe. See you soon.